Dr. Sam Harris. We were just talking about this. You are indeed a doctor.
Yes, I cannot save your life, but I might save your non-existent soul if we talk long enough.
Well, neither of us are clinicians, but we are both brain explorers from the different perspectives, some overlapping.
Yeah.
And I'm really excited to have this conversation. I've been listening to your voice for many years, learning from you for many years. And I'd be remiss if I didn't say that my father, who's also a scientist, is an enormous fan of your Waking Up app.
Nice.
And has spent a lot of time over the last few years. He's in his late 70s. He's almost 80. He's a theoretical physicist, walking to the park near his apartment and spending time meditating with the app, or sometimes separate from the app, but using the same sorts of meditations in his head.
Yeah.
So he kind of toggles back and forth. And even, I shouldn't say even, but yes, even in his late 70s has reported that it has significantly shifted his awareness of self and his conscious experience of things happening in and around him. And he was somebody who I think already saw himself as a pretty aware person, thinking about, quantum mechanics and the rest. So a thank you from him indirectly.
Oh, that's great.
A thank you from me now directly. And I really want to use that as a way to frame up what I think is one of the more interesting questions in not just science and philosophy and psychology, but all of life, which is, what is this thing that we call a self? As far as I know, we have not localized the region in the brain that can entirely account for our perception of self. There are areas, of course, that regulate proprioception, our awareness of where our limbs are in space, maybe even our awareness of where we are in physical space. There are such circuits, as we both know.
Yeah.
But when we talk about sense of self, I have to remember this kind of neuroscience 101 thing that we always say, when you teach memory, you say, you wake up every morning and you remember who you are. You know who you are. Most people do. Even if they lack memory systems in the brain for whatever reason, pretty much everyone seems to know who they are. What are your thoughts on what that whole thing is about? And do we come into the world feeling that way? I would appreciate answers from the perspective of any field, including neuroscience, of course.
Yeah, well, big question. I mean, the problem is we use the term self in so many different ways, right? And there's one sense of that term which is the target of meditation, and it's the target of deconstruction by the practice and by just any surrounding philosophy. So you'll hear, and you'll hear it from me, that this self is an illusion, right? And that there's a psychological freedom that can be experienced on the other side of discovering it to be an illusion. And some people don't like that framing. Some people would insist that it's not so much an illusion, but it's a construct, and it's not what it seems, right? But it's not that every use of the term self is illegitimate, and there are certain types of selves that are not illusory. I mean, I'm not saying that people are illusions. I'm not saying that you can't talk about yourself as distinct, yourself as the whole person, and with psychological continuity with your past experience as being distinct from the person and psychological continuity of some other person, right? I mean, obviously, we have to be able to conserve those data. It's not fundamentally mysterious that you're going to wake up tomorrow morning still being psychologically continuous with your past and not my past, right? And if we swapped lives, that would demand some explanation. So the illusoriness of the self doesn't cut against any of those obvious facts. So the sense of self that is illusory. And again, we might want to talk about self in other modes, because there's just a lot of interest there psychologically and ultimately scientifically. The thing that doesn't exist, it certainly doesn't exist as it seems, and I would want to argue that it actually is just a proper illusion, is the sense that there is a subject interior to experience, in addition to experience. So most people feel like they're having an experience of the world, and they're having an experience of their bodies in the world. And in addition to that, they feel that they are a subject internal to the body, very likely in the head. Most people feel like they're behind their face, as a kind of locus of awareness and thought and intention, and that it's almost like you're a passenger inside your body. Most people don't feel identical to their bodies, and they can imagine, this is sort of the origin, the psychological origin, the folk psychological origin of a sense of that there might be a soul that could survive the death of the body. I mean, most people are what my friend Paul Bloom calls common sense dualists, right? You're just the default expectation seems to be that whatever the relationship between the mind and the body, there's some promise of separability there, right? And whenever you really push hard on the science side and say, well, no, the mind is really just what the brain is doing, that begins to feel more and more counterintuitive to people. And there still seems some residual mystery that, at death, maybe something is going to lift off the brain and go elsewhere, right? So there's this sense of dualism that many people have, and obviously that's supported by many religious beliefs. But this feeling, it's a very peculiar starting point. People feel that they don't feel identical to their experience, right? As a matter of experience, they feel like they're on the edge of experience, somehow appropriating it from the side. You're kind of on the edge of the world, and the world is out there. Your body is in some sense an object in the world, which it's different from the world. The boundary of your skin is still meaningful. You can sort of loosely control your body. I mean, you can control your gross, and subtle, voluntary motor movements, but you're not controlling everything your body is doing. You're not controlling your heartbeat and your hormonal secretions and all of that. And so there's a lot that's going on that is in the dark for you. And then you give someone an instruction to meditate, say, and you say, okay, well, let's examine all of this from the first person side. Let's look for this thing you're calling I. And again, I is not identical to the body. People feel like their hands are out there, and if they're going to meditate, they're going to close their eyes, very likely, and now they're going to pay attention to something. They're going to pay attention to the breath or to sounds, and it's from the point of view of being a locus of attention that is now aiming attention strategically at an object like the breath, that there's this dualism that is set up. And ultimately, the ultimate promise of meditation, I mean, there are really two levels at which you could be interested in meditation. One is, very straightforward and remedial and non-paradoxical and very well subscribed, and it's the usual set of claims about all the benefits you're going to get from meditation, right? So you're going to lower your stress, and you're going to increase your focus, and you're going to, stave off cortical thinning, and there's all kinds of good things that science is saying meditation will give you. And none of that entails really drilling down on this paradoxical claim that the self is an illusion or anything else of that sort. But from my point of view, the real purpose of meditation and its real promise is not in this long list of benefits. And, I'm not discounting any of those, though, the science for many of them is quite provisional. It's in this deeper claim that if you look for this thing you're calling I, if you look for the sense that there's a thinker in addition to the mere arising of the next thought, say, you won't find that thing. And you can, what's more, you cannot find it in a way that's conclusive, and that matters, right? And it has there's a host of benefits that follow from that discovery, which are quite a bit deeper and more interesting than engaging meditation on the side of its benefits, de-stressing, increasing focus, and all the rest.